Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 23 of the Sharper Edge podcast with Betty Parker. I am happy for yet another week to share with you. We didn't get together last week. I had come off of a big trip to Dallas where I spent much of the Thanksgiving week with my brother in law and my nephews and their families and other family members. We decided to all get together and spend Thanksgiving there because we lost my sister in January this year. And so we wanted to keep her legacy going. She loved family gatherings. She loved lots of good food and game playing. And we are a tight knit family. So she wanted us to get together regularly like we always did. And no doubt she would have wanted the same thing had she been here. So we decided to carry on what we would normally carry on, make this a festive time. Because at the end of the day, this is supposed to be a festive time of the year. At the end of the year, it's supposed to be a festive time, a time for a gathering, a time for fellowship, a time for good food and music and, laughter and just so much joy because we've endured probably a long and arduous year, a year that may have been great for some people, but not for others. If you look at the national news, in large part, this has not been a really great year for a lot of people. A lot of people lost their jobs early on in the year, especially if you were with the federal government. You may not have recovered from that. There are a lot of people who have had benefits that have been given to them and taken away and given back. Some folks are scrambling to find work in a job market that's not that appealing right now. The young people coming out of college are struggling as well because now they're having to compete with people who are much more experienced than they are. Everybody's scrambling for the same scraps that they can get from the job market, what's available, what's out there. There are people who are worried about their futures because they don't know what it's going to look like after having a very difficult year this year. So, it should be a time of, joy and excitement, and if nothing else, peace. But that doesn't always occur. And we recognize that. We get it. A lot of times when this time of the year comes, there are people who struggle because they are experiencing grief and loss. Maybe they've lost a loved one just like I have. I'm very acquainted with loss simply because I've lost not only both my parents and my mom at a very young age. She was basically my age when she passed, just a couple of years older than me. And I know I have a lot of living left to do, and we're really looking forward to a great life ahead. But she didn't get that. And then I've lost four siblings, three brothers and a sister, and at young ages as well. They should still be here. But, life has dealt us some very difficult blows at times. So, there are times when people are going to be sitting at their tables this holiday season and a seat is going to be empty. I get that. So there's a lot of grief and loss. There's a lot of loneliness. Maybe there's somebody out there who didn't lose anybody, but they don't have that close knit family. They don't really have a lot of family to connect with. Maybe they don't have as big of a family as I did. I came from a family that had 8 children and both parents very present in the home. So you're talking about a family of 10. Then of those, we've all had children. We got 27, I think, nieces and nephews. And now they are older enough where they're having their own families. They got, spouses and their own children. So, it keeps growing and growing and growing, which is great. And one of the things we're trying to do is make sure that as much as those, the next generation is here, that they stay connected like we did. We know that, we're headed towards our golden years and we have more years behind us than we have in front of us. So we want to make sure that we keep the next generations as close and as tight as we were. And unfortunately, a lot of us have moved to other states. So the children don't grow up together like we grew up together. So we want the cousins to stay in contact with each other so that when we're all dead and gone, they will still be able to connect. They'll be able to get together and be able to reach out to each other and have these gatherings, reunions, and times for the holidays where they will connect with each other. And so if you didn't come from a big family like that, maybe it's just you and you are not with wherever you grew up and you might feel a little lonely around these times. So I get it. It's not going to always be excitement and joy for everybody, but you can recapture that. You can create for yourself what you want to happen in this holiday season. It is a choice to be joyful, regardless of what's going on around you, regardless of the fact that you may not have a job or you're unhappy in the job that you're in, or maybe you have lost a loved one, or maybe you've lost a relationship and you are struggling through, the grief of losing somebody who you really cared about and you thought you would be with for a long period of time. Maybe you're struggling financially. Maybe you've gotten a terrible diagnosis and you don't feel like that there's anything to celebrate at this time. You're just worried about what your life is going to look like in the future, near or long term. So I get it that this might not be a time where you feel like want to be partying or, enjoying yourself with folks because you have some real issues in front of you. I get that part. So what I want to do is extend to you at least three things you can do to be resilient at this time, to bring forth something that will make you feel like you're a part of a time and a season where there are good things happening and you deserve to have some of that goodness happening in your life as well. So let's talk about that. So I mentioned several issues that arise around the holiday time. One thing in particular I want to focus on to start is making sure that you choose joy at this time. Now, I'm going to give a kind of superficial example of something where it could feel stressful to you before I move into the heavy stuff. One is, at this particular time of the year, there are usually workplace gatherings. There are these little drop-in situations that might be going on throughout the course of the month. Maybe there is a office Christmas party. Maybe there are some folks who are at work who have invited you to just stop by at their home or some other venue or location, and you don't know quite if that's something you want to get involved in, because honestly, you're not that close to your coworker. Maybe they were inviting you just to be nice. Maybe the company has had this party just because it's the thing to do this time of the year, but it can turn into a real relationship builder if you choose to connect with people in the right way. And here's what I mean. So let's say you have an office party that's coming up. You're not sure you really want to go. Well, in fact, you really don't want to go, but you feel like you need to be a team player. So you're going to show up just to show your face, right? Just to say, hey, I was there and I wasn't the only missing person. And I'm going to go for just a short period of time and, just say I participated. Well, a lot of times people feel uncomfortable in those situations and their stress level rises because they have to make small talk. Now, it's easy to go to work and have conversations about what you have to do around a particular project or a task. But when it comes to being social, you might not feel as confident, especially if you're not a small talk person or you're an introvert. You don't necessarily want to be around a lot of people for a long period of time. None of these people really interest you. You don't really care much about them outside of work. And you're not really interested in building relationships. But it really is important that you do so, simply because the stronger you build a connection with somebody on your job and on your team, the easier it is to get what you want from them in terms of their support at work, to get them to respond and reply when you need them to. When conflict arises, you can feel more comfortable bringing things up to them. Now, I'm not saying this is a 100% fix or cure for a broken relationship or you just not wanting to connect with people. But there is something that is in your control and something you can do about building connections at work. And it can start as simply as attending one of the Christmas parties and having a conversation that has nothing to do with work. So one quick tip on small talk is this. When you are a part of small talk, it does not have to be meaningless. People call it small because a lot of times people think it doesn't have a lot of substance. It's just a bunch of chatter, which it can be if somebody's not skilled at doing it. And if you're not much of a conversationalist, it can be very difficult for you to have meaningful discussions with people. So you got to go in with a game plan. And what I try to get people to think about is, think about the people you're talking to and look for something that you might have in common with that individual. That's where you start. I'll give as an example, just this past weekend, my husband and I were wearing the logos of our favorite teams. And so we went to an event and immediately that started a whole bunch of discussion with people who have either rival teams or want to ask us about what we think about how our team is doing this year. You look for common ground is what's happening. Maybe you find out from somebody that they like to go bowling. We did that while we were in Dallas as well. That was so much fun. I'm not a big bowler, but I went because that's what would bring us all together as a family. It's a fun thing to do. I'm, like I said, not great at it, but who cares? You don't have to be skilled at it. The whole idea behind it is to stay connected to family and to enjoy ourselves. Like I said, joy is a choice. So went out there and had a fantastic time, being with family and doing something that we can all do together as a team and as a family. And so the same thing happens at work. When we're talking about doing team building, it's about finding something that everybody can do together, a way for people to pull together as one unit and talk through strategy and then enjoy doing whatever it is they have to do. So outside of work, rather than bringing in a whole bunch of discussion around tasks and projects, this is an opportunity at the Christmas party to learn a little something more about your coworkers, something a little more personal. It doesn't have to be deep personal, but it can be something as simple as how many kids your coworkers have. And if one of your coworkers has kids that are in the same age range as your kids, if you have any, that's a great place to start. That's that common ground we were talking about. Or maybe it's you growing up in an area close by where one of your coworkers grew up in another state. Maybe you went to a school that was a rival of them or to the same school at some point. There's so many things we share in common with each other, but we don't always take advantage of those discussions to learn more about each other. More than anything, we look for our differences and we kind of push those differences forward as a means of saying, this is why I don't spend time with these people. We have nothing in common. Well, you probably have more in common than you give yourselves credit for, and more than what you want to do the work to determine. So if you're choosing to get along with people and to get to learn people and to be curious about people, then you are going to get what you strive for. You'll get to learn more about them. You'll get to know what it is that they like and don't like. And you'll get to share those things about yourself with them as well, so that when you do come back to the work environment, we have a better understanding of one another. A lot of things can be shared in simple, short conversations. And that's why I think of small talk not as anything that lacks substance, but just short conversations that you can have with several different people as you work the room. It doesn't mean you have to plant yourself at some table and then just stay there and talk somebody's ear off. No, it means that you can have a quick 3 to 5 minute conversation, find something you enjoy talking about. Maybe it'll be a little bit longer, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then you move on to the next person. Same situation. You find something different with them. And before you know it, you learn something about basically everybody in the room if you want to put yourself out there. Not only are you absorbing some of what they say, but you're also sharing parts of you with them. So they're coming to know you a little bit better. And you just never know what might not come out of that. I had somebody one time was really into pro football. And I shared with them my interest in a similar team. Well, they had tickets that they couldn't use. And they were like, hey, we were supposed to go to the game on this date. Looks like there was a conflict with me and my partner. So I don't want to go by myself. And, I got these tickets. So if you want them, you can have them. I offered to pay. They didn't want me to pay. They were like, no, I'll just give these away. So I was able to go with my husband to a pro football game. You just never know unless you chit chat a little bit and talk to people and share information. It doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be stressful. You just have to be willing to do it. A lot of times we talk ourselves out of these things. It's not because the other side is that difficult to deal with. We perceive them in such a way that we feel like it's not worth our time to really put ourselves out there and have a conversation with them. We judge people based on the limited interactions we have with them, which is at work. It might be surrounded by a lot of other people and a lot of issues related to a particular project or task. And so we misjudge a lot of things because we haven't taken ourselves out of this bubble, which is the office. Sometimes when you can get out of the office and into a different venue, another environment, you can be relaxed, they can be relaxed, and you'll find that there's a lot to talk about and a lot of interesting things about those individuals who you wouldn't normally interact with. So your workplace creates those spaces for you through events where you all can come together. It doesn't have to be just a Christmas party. It can also be a potluck that they might have. It could be a sporting event that they want to buy tickets and invite you all out. Hey, at the baseball field, soccer events, anything. And I'm talking sports mostly, but I would highly encourage companies get tickets to plays and to performances at your local performing arts theater, or just something where you can pull your teams together, company picnics. People don't do that kind of stuff anymore, but it makes such a difference when people can come outside of the work environment and get to know each other. So I highly encourage you to be, when these opportunities arise, to let down your guard, stop being judgmental, and open yourself up more to learning more about your colleagues and allowing them to learn a little bit about you as well. Stress related to workplace events can cause the holiday season to be a little bit off putting for you and not as joyful. And loneliness, number two, kind of plays into that as well. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. There are people who might not have a big network of folks around them. Therefore, they struggle during this time of the year because they don't, they can't partake in a lot of the parties that go on, having a plus one to attend these events with. They're uncomfortable being by themselves at a lot of events. We got to get more comfortable doing that. And if you're a person who is single and you find that you're doing a lot of stuff by yourself, maybe I'm not speaking to you in terms of getting comfortable because you're used to it, right? Your thing is, I want to be around more people because I feel a little bit lonely at this time. There are a lot of dark, dismal days. We're having them right now. Hopefully, I think the sun is supposed to come up starting tomorrow and for the rest of the week, but we have been for days and days in the dark and gloomies, in the wet and the damp and the freezing cold. So this can do a lot to your psyche. If you're prone to have bouts of depression, this can really affect how you experience your days. And I get it. I'm not prone to depression, and it's kind of making me feel kind of weighed down too. So we have to look at, for people who struggle, especially if you're single and you're at this particular time of the year where there's so many events that are going on and people seem to be going about their lives having a great time, but you're by yourself and you don't really know how to put yourself out there to receive an invitation, to take advantage of an invitation that's been given out to everyone, and to go on your own. Maybe you feel a little not intimidated, but maybe are insecure showing up at an event by yourself when everybody else seems to be clumped together in twos and threes. I get it. It might feel awkward in times like that. So you choose not to go, but you really want to be a part of the event. So you have to, here's what I recommend for you. What you ought to do, and I said have to, but you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But what you ought to do if you want to be in a more social environment is just disregard not having somebody with you. You're used to going to places by yourself. Maybe you go to the movies by yourself. Maybe you go out to eat by yourself, and you don't have any problems with that. Okay, same situation. You can go to this event by yourself too, because it's highly likely that if you go to this event, there's somebody there that you know, especially if, and it doesn't have to be a work related event, but maybe it's something else that's social. You found out about the invitation through somebody you likely knew. Okay, so why don't you just call somebody up and say, hey, I want to go to this event, or thank you for telling me about it. Who are you going with? Do you mind if I tag along? It's there are ways in which we can make ourselves available and visible to people without inviting ourselves to an event, right? There's some people who they'll hear about somebody having something going on at their party. Oh, great. When is it? I'd love to be there. No, that's you inviting yourself. But if somebody tells you about an invitation and say, hey, did you hear such and such is going on? And you can say, sure, that's great. Thanks for sharing it with me. Are you going? I would love to tag along if that's okay. Otherwise, if they didn't want you to be there, they wouldn't tell you. So just making sure that you're not overwhelming people. You're not being overbearing. You're not one of those people nobody wants to be around because of your personality or disposition. If people invite you to something or at least tell you about it, it's highly likely that they don't mind you being in their presence. And so, be a good friend, be a good associate or acquaintance. Help them to want to continue to invite you to events because the experiences they have with you are good ones. Be the person who is easy to deal with. Try not to be the person that's trying to dictate and control everything that goes on during the evening. Stay open, stay willing, stay cooperative. and then let people say, oh, they weren't so bad to hang out with. This is our first time being with this person, you, whoever you are. And wow, what a great time. We've got to do this again. If people don't tell you things like that after you come to the end of an evening with them, you might want to check yourself. What is it that I'm doing that people don't want to invite me back for a second time? A lot of times it's whatever you're bringing to the table. But if you have had a great experience, and you'll know it, if you were enjoying yourself and they seem to be enjoying themselves, you'll know by the end of the evening that this was a good one. And we've got to do this again. I just had a dinner with a group of friends. We all teach Sunday school at our church. And although we are already, I consider to be good friends, we don't often take the time to spend quality time with each other. So we said, hey, let's go out to dinner and let's just, spend time just relaxing one another. Oh man, the stories and the laughter that happened around that table. Immediately we were like, we got to do this again. And so we're like, once a quarter, and so it really opened. We learned stuff about each other, and we see each other on a regular basis almost every week. But we also realize that our interactions are limited, and they're based solely around what we do in that environment. If we take ourselves out of a singular environment and invite ourselves out to other spaces and places, then we get to see each other in a more multifaceted way. We're not one dimensional by any means. So if the dynamics change and we can be placed in various situations, various environments, then we react differently in those environments. And we come to find out we just love to have a really good time. And we're going to do more of that. So I'm saying that to you to say that when you are finished at the end of whatever your your socialization or socializing with whomever, whether it's work or colleagues or acquaintances or neighbors or people out in the community, when all is said and done, if they haven't been left with a positive impression of you, then you've got some work to do on you. There's really no need for anybody to be lonely at this time of the year because there's always some kind of event that's going on. And for those of you who are the outgoing people, the ones who love to have a good time and don't mind starting the party and having things going on at your house, be more thoughtful about the single people that you know. Find out if they want to be, a part of what you're going to be offering. Invite them in. Share what you have going on and say, hey, listen, I know you might have other things to do, but if you have any time on your calendar, we're having a little drop in at our house. So please follow me, stop in. We'd love to have you. Sometimes people just need an invitation, and you would be warming the hearts and the minds and emotions of a person who might ordinarily be kind of down in the dumps at a time like this. Let's help create the joy and bring more joy to people. If we've got that, you want to be that ray of sunshine, everybody, then be that ray of sunshine. Don't be exclusive, find ways to be inclusive and inviting other people to events, especially if there are people who, are really decent people. They're pretty good people. You don't spend a lot of time with them, but you haven't heard negative things about them and your interactions with them have been good. Then get to know them better, try to make their day. So we talked about having to have small talk at work. That can be stressful sometimes and difficult and awkward. We talked about being lonely because you are a single person and you don't have a lot of opportunities to go out and mingle and mix with a lot of people just because you're used to being, not used to, well, you are used to being by yourself a lot. But it's not necessarily that you want to always be by yourself. You want to be a part of the mix too during this joyous time. So the third thing and the final thing we'll discuss in today's episode is grief and loss, because this time of year can be very depressing for people if you have lost a loved one very recently, for sure. But it doesn't even matter if it's recent. It can be, a few years have passed and you still feel every time at this time of year, especially if somebody died right around this time of year or a relationship fell apart around this time of year. This is what you've been left with. This is what's been kind of shattered and laid at your feet. And every year it keeps coming back again because you haven't been able to get fully through it. So I get it. As I mentioned, I'm very well acquainted with grief myself. And I also mentioned that joy is a choice. So each year I just get so excited about this time of the year because I feel like this is a time to count my blessings, to recognize everything that I have received throughout the course of my life and certainly over the last year. And even though it may be peppered with something that was difficult to deal with or something that may have brought me low, I refuse to stay in that state of loss and that state of grief. I choose to move through it. Now, I believe people can get through grief. I don't think they get over grief. Okay, so, with all of the loss that I've experienced in my life, not gotten over any of it. If I could have one wish, and that was to bring all of my family that has, preceded me in death back for us to have a huge reunion, I would take that in a heartbeat. Would love to have my family back together. You can't be in a family that large and that close knit and not feel an emptiness once they start leaving you and at very early ages. We didn't come from a whole lot, certainly not a lot of money, but what we had was love. And we had each other, and we loved to laugh, and we loved to eat. And it was so cool when I was very, very young, because I'm the last of the eight, when everybody would come home for the holidays. That's why the holidays mean so much to me. It wasn't about toys and gifts and all of that stuff, because we didn't have a lot of that to give, but it was always some food. There were always family members and friends that would stop by the house. There was always some gathering. And so it was the warmth, the heart of the matter that made us feel good. And more importantly than all of this is our faith, because we knew why we celebrated Christmas. I was in a Christmas play. I had my little recitations. You had to, I think I was one of the grieving women at one point where the shepherds were coming to see the baby Jesus and all of this kind of stuff, right? I have fond memories of those times because we have been taught that this is a high holy day, our holiday. And this is what we really should be focusing our energies on, not just on gift giving and partying, but there is the real crux of why we as Christians celebrate and acknowledge this holiday. It's become very commercialized, of course, and all of us are guilty of being a part of that. But we also make sure we factor in the true reason for why we celebrate in December. And so I haven't forgotten any of those. They've been deeply ingrained and embedded in my life and my existence. I've done the same thing for my family members. And so we make sure that we keep that at the forefront. But I do get it that there's so many really heartbreaking stories that have occurred this past year. There are some people, it's not even just about the loss of a loved one, but some people are grieving diagnoses. I know people who have gotten terrible diagnoses this year. They were wondering and worrying about their future. What is it going to mean for them? These are life-threatening illnesses. They know that at any point, things can spiral for them. They don't know what the future holds. They're trying to make decisions. They're afraid when they have to go into the doctor's office to hear what the outcome of the next exam or the next test or blood work or x-ray or whatever it is they have to go through, any kind of scans they have to go through. This is living in a very stressful time for long periods of time. So I get it where they might not feel like celebrating a lot. But I do believe in celebrating life. And as long as we can be here, as long as we have the opportunity, since none of us really knows when our time is coming, even those who are prepared to die. I had a guy pop up in my feed who has been told there's nothing else they can do for him. I think he has cancer. I don't know him. He just kind of, the algorithm, kind of shifted in my way. And I read his story, and just the bravery and the courage from this gentleman to say, hey, there's nothing else they can do. I'm now preparing for the end of my life. And just to speak very practically about what's to come. My, some people don't get even that benefit. So he can get his house in order. He can do what's necessary. He can, have his conversations with God. He can make amends with anybody he needs to. He can, there's just so many things he can do that would be beneficial to him, even if it won't save his life. So we have to think about how grateful we ought to be, because we might not be facing that. We've got to, be grateful about the time that we have here upon this earth and not allow ourselves to get weighed down by all of the trials and the vicissitudes of life that kind of, can make us feel like, we're just frazzled and we don't know which way to go, or we're deep down in a hole and weighed down by everything that's going on in life. we can turn all of those things around here. We might not be able to affect any of the physical changes of anything, but we can start here in how we view what's going on. And if it feels easier just to be in a rut or not to respond or not to act because it takes too much out of you, then okay for a while. But one of the things I would highly encourage you, if you are in that rut for too long, it'll be too easy to stay there. You start planting roots there, and that's not good for you. So then I would couple my prayer life with getting some professional help. I highly believe in therapy. Sometimes we just got to get to the professionals and let them help us to, bounce back from some of the most difficult things in our life and to dig our way out of that hole that's kind of sucked us in. And the stories we keep telling ourselves about our misery and the losses that we have experienced, though deep and grievous, I totally, totally get it. You still have to carry on your life today. And so, and it's not to ignore what you're feeling, of course, by any means, not to ignore what you're feeling, but to take care of you, to take care of your mental health, to take care of your emotional health, to take care of your spiritual health, and ultimately your physical health. Because the more, the grief impacts your psyche, the more it impacts your physical status. You can develop all kinds of sicknesses and illnesses because you're not eating right, you're not getting enough exercise, you're not socializing as much as you ought to, and it'll be very easy to slip away into an abyss of just depression, and it's going to be harder to climb out of that if you ever get out of it at all. So protect yourself, take care of yourself. All right. So, and if you need to seek grief counseling, by all means do that. There is nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in it at all. And by no means am I trying to sound unsympathetic or callous about what you're going through. I know it hurts. I know it is difficult. And if I can encourage you at all, I do know that as time, that whole adage about time heals all wounds, it is so true. The farther you are away from the actual event of that loss, the better you start to feel. It's not as daunting as it once was. It's not as painful as it once was. And you'll find yourself moving into a more stable environment. Your whole world's been blown up. Okay. I get that. Especially if you've lost a loved one, somebody really close to you. Your entire life is blown up and it will never be the same. And that quote, new normal thing, I hate hearing that, but it's true. What was once normal for you has now changed dramatically. And the longer you live and the older you get, you'll find that there'll be several changes like that occur because as you're aging, so are your friends, and you will see more loss and experience more loss than when you were younger. And so it becomes, and then it seems like they come one behind the other, one behind the other. So my losses are not just in my family, but also with close friends that I've had and seeing them struggle and go through so many things. And so it can really get the best of you if you're not careful. So that's why I don't want to sound like I'm being callous. I totally get where you're coming from, but it really is a choice in how you manage it. So I say have your moments of grief, have your time of grief, take whatever amount of time you need, but just make sure you're always cognizant of your own good mental health. Keep yourself as healthy as possible. Think about your own well-being. We know that we can't change the status of the things that have occurred. Hang on to your faith if that's what's necessary, but by all means, talk to people. Talk to them, the people who are experts in the field. Talk to family members and friends who you know will be there to support you. And here's the other part of that. If this is not you who have experienced this, but you know of people that have experienced those things, be considerate. Be thoughtful about what that person might be going through, especially if you don't know what it is they're going through because you've never had that experience. Don't try to rush them through their grief process. Don't try to tell them that all of those same old trite common things that people say when somebody loses somebody. Well, I guess it was just their time, or everything happens for a reason, and all of these things. There's so many of them. Y'all know what they all are because you probably have said some of those things yourself. It's probably best not to say anything at all than to try to find awkward, encouraging words. Okay. One of the things I've been doing here lately, because I have several friends who have lost children, young children, that one really, really gets to me. And it's just so, so, so incredibly, I don't understand how and why their lives have to be taken from a person of faith, right? But I can rationalize it in my own mind. I don't try to explain it to the family members, especially the parents who have lost their children. So, one of the things I try to do is just to reach out to them periodically because they certainly are on my mind regularly and they're certainly on my prayer list. So, I pray for them regularly, but every now and again, I want to reach out to them and just say something. And so, it's not anything about, all of the common things that people say. It might just be to say, hey, been thinking about you. You've been on my mind. You're still on my prayer list. I'm lifting you up. I'm praying that you find peace, that today is a day where something good happens for you. Just something along that line where I'm not judging how they feel. I'm not forcing them to relive their grief or anything like that, but just to be a spark of hope for them. And it might just be a text message. And I have that same text message for all of them because there's so many of them, unfortunately. And I might just change a little something in there that might be specific to them. And I got to tell you, every time I send it, I get a text message back from them that says, this could not have come at a better time. So, when people are on your mind like that, you're thinking about them, then respond to that, act on it. And you don't have to overwhelm them. Don't wear them out with a bunch of, being in touch, phone calls, text messages, all of this stuff. But just periodically check in with them and just make sure they're okay and that letting them know that you're there for them. So I do that as regularly as I can for those who are friends. Family members, of course, I check with very much, much more regularly because we're all grieving in the same way. We're, experiencing the same loss. Might be my sister, but it's my brother-in-law's wife. It's my nephew's mother. It's my great nieces and nephews' grandmother, right? It's my cousin's cousin. So yeah, it's our sibling. My brothers and sisters is our sibling. So we're all grieving these situations. And the grief, I got to say, y'all, is also different. So a lot of times, grief is not grief and loss is not just loss. It depends on who you are grieving and how that loss occurred. So the relationship I have with my sister is different from the relationship I have with my brother, which is different from the one I had with my mom, and different from the one I had with my dad, different from the one I had with my friend. All of these things, whoever you are connected with, even with my husband, my grief with him is going to be different than what I have with one of my own children. So it's the type of relationship you have with people, and you're going to grieve differently because the loss is different, the person is different, the relationship is different. So don't act like you know exactly what somebody is going through, but just know that it's important to them. And so at this time of, celebration, the life of Jesus Christ, which is what we're all supposed to be celebrating if you are a Christian. If you're not a Christian, hey, just go along for the ride. Respect the Christian's faith, respect the Christian's belief of why this great holiday is here. Don't trash it. Don't put it down. Don't call us crazy. Don't say the Bible is a fantasy book. I see all that stuff that's put out there on Facebook and all of the other social media platforms. And it bothers me. I got to say, it really does bother me because I don't trash other people's beliefs. Your belief is really, really something that's important and personal to you. And so I let people have their beliefs or their non belief. I don't go in there and try to preach at people and tell them they are wrong. If you choose not to believe, you choose not to believe. As long as you and I are vibing good and you don't disrespect me, I don't disrespect you, we can be okay. I'm not going to sit here and try to preach at you. If you have a curiosity about my faith, then feel free to ask me about it. I'm happy to talk to you about it. But the decision is ultimately yours. I'm not going to condemn you to hell. I can't do that anyway. Okay. And that's not what we're supposed to do. So, but so whether you're a believer or not, or whatever it is you believe in, just respect that this is a Christian holiday and let the Christians have their holiday. So during this time, this whole Advent season, this is a time of celebration. So I implore those who might be struggling with depression or grief and loss at this particular time to find a way in the midst of all of these weeks and days to bring joy back into your life. Go seek out joy. Make it as much a part of your existence as the grief process. Okay, look for opportunities to find joy in a memory of your loved one. We shared a lot of stories about my sister when we were at my brother-in-law's last week or the week before, whatever Thanksgiving was. Yeah, everybody was like, oh, but if Pauline was here, she would say blah, blah, blah. And then there'd be a story about her. And then we'd all laugh about it, And so, and everything I cooked, everything I did was based on her. I was using her pots and pans. I was using her, everything that was in there. I was in her kitchen. I was using all of her things that she once used. And it just, everything I touched reminded me of her, but not out of sadness. I just knew that if she were here, it would have been a fun time. I know we could hear her laughter. Everybody would talk because she liked to laugh. So we would hear her laughter. So it wasn't a time of sadness for us. It was a time of commemoration and memories and joy. And so I could have chosen to be, in grief or bereaved at that time and just walked around the house and felt her presence and felt sadness. Or I could remember all of the great times and the fun things and the joyous things and what she would be doing if she were here. And I can find laughter and joy in that. So it really is a choice. And that was the one I chose. All right. So I hope something I said here today has been helpful to you. I hope that you will enjoy these coming days and weeks. I just put my Christmas tree up yesterday. I'm trying to get in the spirit here. I really am. I hope the sunshine comes back again tomorrow and we're all here to see it, even though it's going to be really cold this week. But, I hope to be back again next week. I'm interested in hearing what you are going to be celebrating in the next few weeks. Tell me how you're dealing with any of the things that I just shared with you if you are experiencing it. How do you manage small talk? Are you going to attend your office parties or any other party where you might feel uncomfortable? Are you experiencing grief and loss? How are you managing it? Can you choose joy at a time like this? Or are you nervous or anxious or feeling depressed in these moments? And then, if you are single and you just need somebody to reach out to you because you want to enjoy this holiday time with other people, then tell us what you do. How do you manage that? How do you navigate that? This is something we can all do to help one another. And this forum is for any and everybody who wants to be of support with, a support for and somebody else. And certainly if you're trying to get something for yourself as well. So I appreciate you listening. Thank you for being a part of today. And I'll look forward to, God willing, seeing you next week for episode 24 of the Sharper Edge podcast with Betty Parker. Have a great week.